Thank you so much. I know David is not in his place, but what a great Foreign Secretary he will be. "22 years ago, Nelson Mandela stood before this conference. He told us then that Labour's solidarity had helped make those years of exile bearable. Well, conference, today international solidarity and Britain's leadership has never mattered more. The world faces energy, debt and food crises. The climate emergency wreaks havoc. From drought in East Africa to mass floods in Pakistan, 100 million people are now displaced around the world. 50 million people on the brink of famine. But conference, when times are tough, that is exactly when we stand up to be counted. The last Labour government changed lives at home, from Sure Start to the minimum wage. But we also changed lives overseas, creating the world-class Department for International Development, supporting the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa, and at Gleneagles, cancelling hundreds of millions of pounds of unjust debt. But conference, 12 years of Tory rule has taken its toll. DFID shut down, aid repurposed and diverted away from tackling poverty, and our international reputation in tatters. And in the middle of a global pandemic, they carried out the cruelest cuts imaginable to life-saving aid programs. The Tories were warned by their own impact assessment that the cuts would devastate women and girls at risk of violence, but they went ahead anyway. They were warned by the security services that aid cuts would risk our national security, but they went ahead anyway. Ex-prime ministers and international development secretaries from their own party queued up to warn that the cuts would cost hundreds of thousands of lives, but they went ahead anyway. Well, conference, their development strategy and Boris Johnson's ideological merger has failed. It now falls to Labour to undo that damage and earn back the trust of our partners. Keir was absolutely right when he called the closure of DFID totally misguided and wrong-headed. And his commitment to international development speaks to who he is. So just as 25 years ago, DFID was created to tackle the global challenges we faced, it continued to evolve from 1997 to 2010, and it will do so again. A Labour government will put in place a new model with the independence needed to meet the challenges of the 21st century, one that recognises the link between development and climate. Its mission will be to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals, and we will reinstate Britain's commitment to spend 0.7% of income on aid. And we will deliver a distinct development programme that brings value for money and ends this government's wasteful and transactional approach. Conference, the climate emergency is this century's biggest threat to humanity. That is why I am also announcing today that Labour will legislate to make sure Britain's aid budget helps address climate change. Conference, I didn't grow up with much. My mum was a seamstress, my dad a bus driver. But I did grow up knowing the importance of helping others. From when I first joined my dad, volunteering at the local Sikh Gurdwara where he was president, I saw that helping neighbours makes us richer, not poorer. Those values of service and solidarity flow through every corner of our movement and our country. When the British people give up their homes to Ukrainians fleeing Putin's war, when we give to a charity appeals in the middle of a cost of living crisis, we do so not because it's easy, but because it is right. And frankly, when the Tories won't support the British people's solidarity to the world, when they won't even keep their manifesto promises to voters on aid, and when they throw more than £100 billion of your money at the energy bosses, but then tell you they can't afford to save lives overseas and make Britain safer, well, conference, I say, not in our name. I, for one, will not rest until our values, Britain's values, are once again shaping what our government does in the world. In opposition, we are forcing U-turns from the Tories and winning over voters fed up with their basic lack of compassion. So, conference, let's keep the pressure up. Our record on international development gave hope to our allies in fighting for a better world, and with Labour in government, it will do so again. 22 years ago, Mandela urged us to become once more the keepers of our brothers and sisters, no matter where they find themselves in the world. It is time to heed that call again. We will back the next generation at home and abroad, demanding a fairer, greener, global future. Conference, this is a reset moment for the Sustainable Development Goals. It's time to renew our movement to fight poverty, inequality, and the climate crisis. Keir Starmer, our leader, knows that a Labour Party that is true to its principles is a Labour Party dedicated to winning power. So let's get Keir Starmer into Downing Street, Labour back into power, and a fairer, greener future for Britain. Thank you.